Hello and welcome to your Average to Good podcast. Call it what you want. I'm your host for today, Charlie Davies, former U.S. men's national team striker, joined by the legend, the icon, probably known from his mullet days, 1994 starting goalkeeper when the World Cup was here stateside, but the legend, Tony Meola. Welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
I wish I was the creator of the mullet. I really do. Because that would be, just imagine that on your resume, the creator of the mullet. I was just following along at the time, Charlie. But it was nice to know I could grow hair that long back in the day.
Hey, I swear you're the one, at least, who started in our sport. You're the first one to rock it. Yeah, nice. You're the first one to rock it at the highest level in our sport.
I'll roll with that. I'm good with that.
So today... Thanks, We got a lot to talk about. We're going to get to know our Group C opponents in Copa America. We got Bolivia, Panama, and Uruguay. We're also going to talk about the top 5 key decisions Gregg Berhalter needs to get right for Copa America. I hope we start off strong and he answers all these questions. And then the third topic, we're going to talk about 3 U.S. men's national team players who need to prove themselves at Copa America. I think we'll have some crossover there. And then the final projected U.S. men's national team 11 for the Bolivia game. I think we may have some differing 11s there. And then we got to talk about the Kicking It episode that debuts tonight with McBrizzle. It's a happy birthday, Brian McBride. Today is his birthday. So all right. It's a big birthday, day for Brian. And then ultimately our Copa America 2024 predictions. So 3 of us have the same winner. We'll get into that. But let's start off with Bolivia, our first opponent to kick off Copa America. Would you say they're the third highest ranked team in this group, or would you put Panama ahead of them? Because they're certainly lower than us and Uruguay.
I think all in all, and I'm just looking at this roster and the final, I would think they are the third, if you will. And there's so many people that say don't overlook Bolivia. This is a side, obviously, that competes in CONMEBOL qualifying. I like the way that the lineup of games happens for the U.S. because I think this is the pivotal game in the competition for them. To advance, you always got to win the first game. So you're always coming out with energy. You should have fight. They have this sort of progression from Colombia to Brazil, and hopefully that carries over to what we're going to see against Bolivia. So I like the fact that you could pick up some points and then you can really solidify things against Panama. But I would caution anybody to overlook any of these teams, especially the teams in CONMEBOL. We look at CONMEBOL and we say, well, this team's done this in qualifying and this team's done that. You can look at Brazil and say, what are they in 6th place right now in qualifying? Mm-hmm. So don't read too much into that part of it just yet, but but completely understand that these teams go through the most rigorous World Cup qualifying that you can go through. So they're battle tested, if you will. But again, I still think just based on talent, based on what this group has, you've got some guys that play in Bolivia. You got a few guys that play outside of Bolivia. But for the most part, if you look at their roster, they play in the Bolivian league. I think this is a team that we should be able to take care of, Charlie. And look, if we don't, good chances we don't go through, right, in this group. So I really think this is the pivotal one because we all agree, right? Uruguay is the favorite in the group right now. But that doesn't mean Uruguay wins the group. But I do think they're going to make a deep run in the competition. And I think they're going to be, in and around the semifinals somewhere, this Uruguayan side. So if you chalked up already in your head that Uruguay is a loss, this is the game that you have to win.
You couldn't have said it better, but I'm going to be a little bit more demanding in terms of the U.S. men's national team should win this convincingly. of course, there's no easy game in Copa America. Everyone's going to be playing for their lives, especially this Bolivian side where, yes, most of them do play in Bolivia, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be competitive. That doesn't mean they're not going to be good. There's a good understanding. They obviously, the cohesion with the unit, because they all play with each other or against each other, very familiar with each other. So I think you're going to see a lot of those relationships on the pitch, but they are far from our quality. When you're talking about quality, I think they're the fourth team in this group. I think I would put Panama above them in terms of quality. Now, in terms of a unit, we'll see what we get. But this is a great game to kick off Copa America for the U.S. because if you have the game that we all want them to have, where it's free flowing, you have Gino Reyna higher up the pitch. He's connecting all these passes, bringing Christian in and Timothy Weah and if, whether it's Balogun, Pepe, Sargent, or Haji Wright, whoever is that the 9, they're all getting chances and it's free flowing. You start off with a bang, 3-4 goals, get the confidence going. That would be my expectation in that first game. Now, it obviously doesn't always go according to plan. Just look at these Euros where the favorites are scraping by in a lot of cases, or it's just not happening for them in the final third. So, yeah, to your point, Tony, you cannot overlook Bolivia, but you want to start as strong as possible. And for me, this is the weakest team in the group. So it would really benefit the U.S. to have a positive start.
So the one thing that comes to mind, and we've been talking about this with the Euros, if you're Bolivia and you feel that the U.S. is a better team than you, right? Mm-hmm. I would think that they're thinking as well is Uruguay is the best team in the group. So the team that Bolivia has to beat is the U.S. And I say all the time, if you run up against the top team in the group or a team you got to beat, I'd rather play that team early in the competition, in particular the first game, before they've gotten a rhythm, before they've grown into the tournament. Because how many times do we see, Charlie, in competitions, and we're seeing it a little bit right now in the Euros, we see it in World Cups, we see it in Copa Americas, it doesn't matter, that the team that's there in the end, that's making it through the deeper rounds of the competition, sometimes they don't start well, right? And they start to grow and they get into it, and a little bit of nerves settle, the nerves settle after game one. And so if you're Bolivia, just think about what they're thinking right now, because the reality is they're not coming here for vacation. They want to get to the next round. This is the game that they have to. If I'm Bolivia, I'm thinking I've got to beat the U.S. in Panama. That's who I'm. If I'm Panama, I'm thinking I've got to beat those other two teams. But they have scars from the U.S., that Bolivia doesn't have. So it's a really, like I said from the start, I like, Charlie, the way that the games line up for the U.S. right now.
Couldn't have said it better. And when you're looking at the U.S. game for Bolivia, if it's 0-0, that's a win. You just want to keep that goal differential, right, intact, not concede, and just make it super difficult. And if you get 3 draws in a row, that's great for Bolivia. So, Bolivia come into this Copa America having lost 12 straight Copa America matches. So that kind of gives you an idea of just where they've been over the past couple of years, if not decades. And the U.S. are 2-2-4 all time versus Bolivia, with 2 wins coming in the past 2 meetings in 2016 and 2018. The last win versus Bolivia, Bolivia had against the U.S. men's national team was June 12th, 1996. So, in saying that, let's put a nice bow on that Bolivian preview, and let's move on to the next opponent for the U.S. men's national team, which is Panama. We've seen them quite a bit. What are your thoughts on this Panamanian side? I mean, for me, Coco Carrasquilla is the prime player in this group. But how do you feel that Thomas Christiansen has kind of improved his side?
Yeah, I think what we've seen of late from his side is that a team a little bit more willing to attack. Of course, Coco Carrasquilla and what was it, Gold Cup, right? He won the player of the tournament last time around. He's a guy, along with Godoy, that can control the midfield for you. Mm-hmm. Look, they want to attack. I don't think, when they've got a guy that can stretch the field, like who's it, Ishmael Diaz, right, can stretch the field for them. I don't think they're going to be in awe of the U.S. I don't think it's a situation, because they've played the U.S. so many times, right? I do think, as I mentioned, there's a few scars there. They haven't won a heck of a lot against the U.S. but it's a very capable side. I get the sense sometimes with a team like Panama that a lot of it depends for them how the competition starts, right? Where their confidence is high. If they can get absolutely anything out of the Uruguay match, and even if it is goal differential where they're not completely blown out of this thing, then maybe that is the plus, the positive and the plus side of things for them. But they've got some guys that can play. Ishmael Diaz, Cecilia Waterman, who plays in Peru, pretty good player. But again, I think for them, it's about the start. The one thing, their challenge, Charlie, for me, is make sure you're in the tournament after the first match, right? And
yes.
Again, if it's goal differential, then that's what it is. If they lose by a goal and it comes down to that, but make sure if you're Panama, you're not out of this thing before the thing even starts.
You're 100% right. And for Panama, it's just keeping it close. I think in counterattack is where they could really hurt teams in this group. If they can defend well as a unit in their 3-5-2, sometimes it's a 3-4-3, but if they can defend well, whip in balls and be good in transition and on the counter, this Panamanian side could surprise some teams. The U.S. are 17-2-7 all time versus Panama, but Panama are 1-1-1 in the past 3 meetings. The draw finished with a Panama penalty shootout win in the Gold Cup semifinals. I remember that one extremely well. So Panama is not a team to be overlooked as well. And the final team in our group, Uruguay, who are on this incredible run right now. Tony, this Uruguay side is, you could argue, is up there with Argentina in terms of form and prowess right now, because Brazil have not looked great as of late. So how do you feel our chances are against this Uruguay side that is definitely feeling it?
Well, yeah, they are feeling it. I don't know that we'll be in awe of this based on who we have, but you're talking about a new Uruguay, right? When we think about Uruguay, we think of 1-0 results. We think about hard-nosed players. They've always had those, always fighting on the field, never giving up in any challenge. And now you throw Marcelo Bielsa into the mix, and now you've got this style of pressing. And I'm one of the first to say I think pressing for national teams is one of the hardest things. And then the 99th year, and then we had the 100th edition when Chile won both of those 2 competitions against Argentina. One was in Chile, and then the following year it was here in the U.S. That's when the U.S. got knocked out by Argentina, the Messi free kick and all of that. That team, that Chilean side, was also a pressing side. And one, you've got to remember, you're talking about national team players, so you're generally talking about the best players, in their positions at their clubs. You bring them into a national team. There's a bunch of egos involved. You don't have time, because normally you have a little bit more time for this Copa America because it's in the summer, but you normally don't have a lot of time during World Cup qualifying, 2 or 3 days before kickoffs of your first game. And then you generally don't train after that. You're watching video. So I think pressing is one of the hardest things to do for a national team. But Marcelo Bielsa, look, we know he's done this time and time again. This is his style of play. He only has one style of play. And to get guys to buy into that, and then to get guys to learn how to do it. Because let's face it, when you're a big superstar, like, you're a Valverde, right? Of course, he plays at Real Madrid, and they're not pressing all over the place. But now you come to the national team, and the manager's saying, okay, for you to be on the field, like, we're going to run, we're going to press everywhere, the high energy, and you just come off a long season and you win Champions League, and now you're going to come and play this way. I think it's a really difficult task to get guys to buy into that. But look, Marcelo Bielsa, he's the master of this, and he's the guy that seemingly has gotten them to buy into this. So this is a really interesting challenge. It's an interesting challenge for the U.S. It's also an interesting challenge for Uruguay, because when we think about CONMEBOL, even though there's history with Uruguay, Brazil, and Argentina, and how all those 3 teams seem to always beat each other up, I think Uruguay at some point wants to make the next step, right? Wants to be in that conversation. Right now, Argentina is the conversation. Brazil, in a lot of ways, is trying to also catch Argentina right now. So an interesting dynamic for Uruguay in sort of the the history and evolution of their federation right now.
And they have a strong spine, so it's going to make it that much more difficult for not only the CONMEBOL teams, but also for the U.S. in that last group stage game in Copa America. So we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into the 5 things that Gregg Berhalter must get right. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Break. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm your host, Charlie Davies. Joined with me is the iconic, the legendary Tony Meola. And now we're going to get to the 5 key decisions Gregg Berhalter needs to get right for Copa America. So let's start with number 5. Replace Sergiño Dest's production, Tony. That's something he needs to get right. How do you replace Sergiño Dest's production?
Well, we don't have another player that's the same exact profile as Sergiño Dest, right? Joe Scalli's been the guy, and we can only assume that come the starting lineup against Bolivia, we're going to see Joe Scally, right? So I think what we've learned over the 2 games is it's going to be there's going to be more of an emphasis where Sergiño Dest is probably, I'm going to say, like, his mindset is 70% attacking and 30% maybe defending, where it might be flipped for Joe Scally. And maybe Joe Scally in the first 2 games sort of as the right back, if you will, against Colombia and Brazil. Now he was pinned back a little bit against Colombia. Maybe he was a little bit more conservative. I wonder, with a little bit more time, a little bit more space against Bolivia and Panama at least, if we see Joe Scally get forward. But I don't know that we're going to get the same attacking production. I do hope that we get at least an option in the attack on the right side from our right fullback. And again, we can only assume it's going to be Joe Scally because he got the 2 starts in the last 2 games. But if we get more on the defensive side of things and get solid defending from him, I think we also take that as a plus as well, Charlie.
You know, I want to just put something on you for a second. Let's say we do have all this possession, and like you mentioned in the first segment, Bolivia is saying, hey, we just want to get a draw. Well, we're defending. You got to break us down. And Joe Scally's obviously his experience and his ability is in defending. And I think he's done a pretty good job of defending. When asked, I go back to that Nations League final when he had to replace Sergiño Dest because of the red card, and he handled Alphonso Davies for 90 minutes. That's pretty damn impressive. And so you look at how he did it in the Brazil match as well. I thought he was pretty good. So given that, would you flirt with the idea of bringing Timothy Weah back down to that right back position where he's played at Juve in that right wing back spot? He's also played a full season with Lille as a right back and a left back. Or would you move a Yunus Musa at right back where we've seen him play at AC Milan as recent as this past season? Weston McKennie has played there, although Weston, I probably would prefer a Yunus Musa there, just given you lose a lot with Weston moving out of the midfield. So just playing devil's advocate, if you are going up against a team that's not really looking to attack and you need someone who is a little bit more gifted with service and breaking down people down that right flank, when would you try that if you're not going to try it against the Bolivia?
Well, I think you start with Joe Scally because that's what you've built and see how the game goes. But if you get in a moment where you think, okay, we're completely in control in the attack, you make a change at halftime. Say you want to bring Brendan Aronson on and get more into the attack. So what do? Maybe you take Joe Scally out, you drop Timothy Weah back, and because you know he's going to be in the attacking third of the field more often than not. But I think you start with him a little bit, a little bit more conservative, if you will. And see how it plays out. But I'm with you. If those opportunities arise, I think you can go to them, later in the game.
All right, let's go to number 4. Maximize Gio Reyna. We've talked about it. Gio Reyna, he's got a lot to prove this tournament. This is a big tournament for him, both for the U.S. Men's National Team, but also for his club, his future of his club, because his club football hasn't been great, so to speak, over the past year. Dortmund, yeah, they're moving on from Terzic, who obviously didn't really love Gio Reyna because he didn't play him, and then they obviously loaned him out, and then he didn't do well in his loan move to Nottingham Forest. So he has a lot going into this tournament, a lot to put on his performance. So how do the U.S. men's national team maximize Gio Reyna?
The simple for me, the more touches he gets in the attacking third of the field, I think that's how we maximize him. If you go back to, I still go back to, and I don't know if it was by design or if it was how the game played out, the Mexico, the Nations League final, where I thought Gio was great. The work was incredible. I think the most work I've seen him put in a U.S. men's national team jersey. But he did a lot of it in dropping deep into the midfield to try and make the game. If we can avoid that as much as possible and get him as close to the goal, because we know how dangerous he can be close to goal, I think that's where we maximize him. He's going to be on the field. He has to be on the field. But let's get him in creative areas where he can be creative.
100%. And then in key decisions that Gregg Berhalter needs to get right, we're going to go to number 3 with Tyler Adams, load management. Now, you've managed Tyler in the youth national team stages in the ranks, and you've seen him, and we've come to see his potential and his impact with this group and how he's a leader. He's a captain. But when they don't have him on the pitch, there is a drop off. So given that he finally got some minutes under his belt in this last friendly against Brazil is late, how do you see them using Tyler? Is it 30 minutes in this Bolivia game? Do you give him 45? How often do you play him 60? Do you not play him at all? Well, how do you see them getting him fit for that Uruguay game, which I think is going to be really the tough test of the group stage? And that's definitely where you need Tyler Adams.
Well, there's a plan for Tyler Adams, right? We don't know exactly what it is, but it's leading up to, at some point, getting Tyler Adams to play 90 minutes. And hopefully it's in this tournament. And hopefully it's, as you mentioned, before the Uruguay game. But there's a plan. And they're not going to, I don't think they're, with him and his history, I don't think they're going to deviate from whatever the plan that they figured out with him and his club. And I think that probably makes the most sense is to do that, because he does have this short history. And I think Gregg is probably going to be really respectful of whatever that plan is that they agreed on, because we have that. Remember the image from Nations League, right? When they took Tyler Adams out, where it was 45 minutes and that was it. And, he was kind of in a respectful way having an argument with Gregg, like, no, I want to stay on the field. And we knew what he was talking about, but Gregg had to respect the fact that his club had this agreement. And I still think they will stick to whatever the numbers, Charlie, they say are going to get Tyler to where he needs to be to get to 90 minutes fit. I don't think they're going to rush anything. We all hope, right, that it's before the Uruguay game, but if it's not, maybe it's somewhere down the road in the tournament. Maybe we don't see it in this competition. That's the reality. Maybe we don't see 90 minutes from Tyler Adams. Of course, we all want to get there, and I'll
be damned if I don't see Tyler Adams for 90 minutes. I will be damned.
I know it's tough to think about, right? But they've got to look. We've all come back from injuries. You have a plan. One game, it's 45 minutes. You got to see how you react. So the next game, it's 60 minutes. You might come out of the 60 minutes and go, man, I don't feel real good. I just played 100 and plus minutes in 2 games, and I haven't done that in, however many months. And so the plan was game 3, where now you go 70 minutes, but after game 2, you got to scrap the plan because you just can't get there. So you got to have the plan. You got to try and execute, and then you got to see how the player's body reacts.
Well, it's perfect segue into key decision number 2, which is subs and in-game adjustments, where I think this is the area Gregg Berhalter really needs to improve. Because it's one thing to be super prepped and have an idea, and you watch video and you say, this is how Bolivia plays, this is how Panama plays, this is how Uruguay plays under Bielsa. It's another thing when in the game, maybe a player gets injured, or they turn to a possession, or they turn to a mid block, or they do something that was unexpected, and you have to make those changes before it's too late. And I think that's where I've always struggled in watching the U.S. play, because I say, man, it's either going really well and then things change because the other team makes changes and you don't adjust, or you came in with the right game plan in theory, but they're doing something completely different. So it's not working, and you need to change instead of continuing to try and put a square peg in a round hole. So where do you sit on the subs and in-game adjustments?
Yeah, mine's real simple. This is where Gregg Berhalter needs to be better in his time, is making those in-game adjustments. Go back to the Netherlands, right, in the World Cup, and I would imagine teams are going to sit back against us based on, seeing our inability at points to break teams down. So this is a really important view for us over the next 3 weeks or so, hopefully 3 weeks or so, on how Gregg Berhalter makes his adjustments. I think they're always prepared. I think they always have a game plan. They don't always execute it, but making changes is where the elite managers of the world get to in their careers. They're able to make changes based on what they see, and we'll be looking out for this one for sure.
And Tony, I'm just going to take us to the promised land with the key decision number one. It's identify the starting number 9. Now, this is a position I played. This is a position that I think the U.S. has yet to find a clear favorite, a clear number 1 who's going to take the reins and say, I'm that guy. And so for this tournament, Gregg Berhalter has to figure out who is that player that you're going to depend on to not only score goals, which is the number 1 job for number 9, to score goals. You get an opportunity to finish. But also, when you're talking about the best players in the group, Christian Pulisic, he is your best player on the team, your most dynamic attacking player. How do you create more space for him? How do you help him get this team over the hump, right? So for me, you got to have a number 10 to supply the number 9. Service is a big thing with this team. How often is that number 9 involved in the game? If Valerian Balogun is your number 9, this is not a striker who can be on an island and win just aerial balls, long balls. That's not your striker if that's the style you're going to play. If you're not going to get that much service, Balogun's not your guy. And he's your most technically gifted striker that you have in this group. He's your best finisher in this group. But if he's not getting service, he's not getting balls to his feet, that's where he needs to excel. Connectivity with Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna, and Timothy Weah, but balls to his feet so he can move in and around the box. That's what his gift is. Then he's not your guy. Then the next up, is it Josh Sargent, which I highly doubt because he hasn't featured at all in these friendlies. He's still coming back from injury, so he's not going to be sharp. Even if he is good to go, and you could say he's 100% healthy, which we both know he's not. Probably not your guy. Still working through it. Number 3, it's Ricardo Pepi. Ricardo Pepi has everything to play for. He's number 2 at his club, and that situation is not going to change at all because the captain is Luke de Jong is in his position. So the only thing that he can benefit from this tournament is 1, increasing his stock with the U.S. men's national team, and 2, increasing his value. So if he doesn't want to stay at PSV, if Luke de Jong is for this season and next season, and you need to play, this is how you show everyone else around the world that you're ready for the next step. So Gregg Berhalter has a lot to figure out in terms of what he's going to do at that position. How does he maximize that position? So it's going to be an interesting summer, and these are big decisions that Gregg has to get right, in my opinion, for Copa America to be a success. We got to take a break, but just so you know, when we come back from that break, we're going to talk about 3 U.S. men's national players who need to prove themselves at Copa America. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. And yes, just in time to talk about the 3 U.S. men's national team players who need to prove themselves at Copa America. I think we're all pretty similar in terms of the 3 players we selected, but let's take a look at the top 3 players that we think need to prove themselves here. Joe Scally, Yunus Musa, and Valerian Balogun. So I had 2 of 3 players on this list. The only person would be Matt Turner, who I think needs to prove himself given his club situation, and he's been shaky, especially in that Colombia game. It redeemed himself in the Brazil match, but I think Yunus Musa, I know he's on this list, but for me, we know how good he is. Yes, he needs to cement himself, but prove himself, I'm not so sure. But Balogun is the one player, given all the uncertainty at that number 9 position, given the uncertainty of service in that position, needs to show a strong Copa America, kind of give himself hope, but also America hope that, hey, we have a striker who's at that caliber who can get us over the line. Because I go back to that Netherlands World Cup match where we lost, and it started Jesus Ferreira because Josh Sargent was injured in that Iran game, in that third match of the group stage. And you just didn't have anything from Jesus Ferreira. There was no impact, no influence, and you need a goal scorer who's going to either, one, create opportunities, or two, be on the end of those opportunities. And Jesus Ferreira was too much checking into midfield to try and be another, whether it's a decoy or another person to help with possession. And so I think this is the one key player who needs to have a strong Copa America to prove themselves.
Yeah, I think Joe Scally was certainly the one we all had, right? That he needs to, and we're looking to fill that void, as we talked about earlier in the show with Serginho Dest. Yunus, for me, I get to watch him on a weekly basis. Good player, still needing to cement himself, not only at the club level, but here with the national team as well. Because if we're talking about him and we're looking at starting lineups, and he's not on everyone's list, like a Weston McKennie is, or like a Christian Pulisic is, but has that World Cup experience, maybe he needs to prove to us that he belongs in there. And I think he will. I think this is a tournament for Yunus Musa, that he could be sort of the guy who emerges as, hey, you know what? Every time Gregg puts out a lineup, he's going to be there. And we talked about the number 9 position, right? We need a goal scorer. We need a guy to say, okay, this is my job. This is my spot, and I'm going to be your leader when it comes to scoring goals. So the only other one I would have on that list, I had Chris Richards in my mind, just from looking at a guy that's now established himself at club level, coming back to the national team, and always look at 10-year sort of center backs and goalkeepers that will be around the national team for a long time. I think he could be that guy. I'm hoping that this tournament proves that he is that guy. So that's the only other guy that I would, me personally, would put on that list. But yeah, there's some guys where this competition, Charlie, is really important.
Yeah, like for McBride, he had Ricardo Pepi, Malik Tillman, and then Joe Scally. And again, Ricardo Pepi is kind of caught in no man's land, because if he isn't starting, well, he's definitely not starting at his club. Is this an opportunity where, hey, let me parlay this into an Olympic appearance as well, if you're not really playing as much as you'd like? And Jimmy had Scally, Musa, Balogun. So we were all around the same kind of place. Yeah. I mean, I had Matt Turner because of his situation. You're a goalkeeper. Where does Matt Turner fit into the equation?
Yeah, it's always tough when you're not playing at any position, but the goalkeepers, it's a rhythm position. So I think what we did see was a natural progression from Colombia game to Brazil game, and hopefully that is enough to get him where we saw him prior to the World Cup, coming in as the number 1 guy, right? He's going to be the number 1 guy. And we know in these competitions, we've seen this from U.S. goalkeepers for years. Our goalkeepers generally need to play well, right, for us to advance in these competitions. So he's going to be really important to the success of this team for sure.
Well, I'm super hyped because the Bolivia game is a perfect place, a perfect opponent for these guys to step up and prove themselves and show that they're ready. They're ready. I mean, Balogun is the one that really needs to set the tone. I think in terms of all the players that we've listed, I think we know what Scally is. He's had to do it before, but Balogun at the 9 position, with all the hype that he had coming into the national team setup, has yet to really make his mark. Yeah, he scored in the Nations League, but this is where he needs to come out and show, hey, I'm a top level, top caliber striker. So, I mean, it's an exciting tournament. It's a big game. And I have belief. I believe But that's it. We're going to take a little break, short break. We'll be back on the other side talking about a whole lot of noise. So don't go anywhere. This has been an incredible show. We'll be back soon. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. We had to dive into this real quick. It's the projected U.S. Men's National Team 11 for the Bolivia match. So, Tony, why don't you take it away? Give us your projected 11. And is this what you want or what you foresee Gregg putting out?
I think it's a little bit of both, and it's pretty straightforward, and it all kind of is based around Tyler Adams, and I don't think he's going to start match day one. So no surprise in the back five for sure. Matt Turner, Anthony Robinson, Tim Ream on the left-hand side, Richards and Scally on the right-hand side. So no real big surprises there. I think Johnny starts with Weston McKennie alongside him, or Weston pushed a little bit higher up the field as sort of an 8, and Johnny is more of a true 6, but we know Weston, he will do the work rate to get back defensively and cover with Johnny. With Gio Reyna, let's call it a 10 role, but more of a roaming role, if you will. Pulisic on the left, Timothy Weah, and Flo up top as the number 9. Yeah, okay. I think you and I talked about this with Brian a couple days ago. It might have even been yesterday's show. I can't remember now, but I don't think you make a change up top for a lot of reasons. One, it becomes a storyline that you don't want to deal with in major competitions, at least for now. 2, if Flo is not your guy right now, what do you do to him mentally right from the start? You're pretty much already saying you're not our guy right from the jump, right? So Ricardo Pepi, he's going to be available. He already understands the substitutes role and has flourished this year in that role, even though he's probably not happy with it. But I think he gets how you come in as a sub and all of that stuff. So for I think most of it figures itself out. Johnny, the one over Yunus Musa in the midfield right now. But if the game opens up and they have a little bit more of the ball, I think we see Yunus come in that position.
See, almost spot on, but I think Yunus Musa is going to slide into that midfield role because when you talk about dribbling and getting out of pressure, but also dribbling through pressure, maybe creating something off the dribble, I think Yunus Musa just gives you a little bit more than a Johnny Cardoso. I know Johnny Cardoso can just sit there and you allow Weston to roam and get up forward into the box with his late runs, but I think Yunus Musa will be more advantageous when you're talking about a Bolivian side who probably won't throw numbers forward. So in terms of keeping possession, maybe Yunus Musa is a little bit better for that. But all in all, Balogun is the big test, in terms of a low block, getting touches on the ball. I think he gives you a little bit more with the ball at his feet than a Ricardo Pepi. So not only will that help him in terms of his confidence of starting, but I think he will benefit the team more because he'll get more touches.
I want to see Flo score game 1. Yeah. I just want to see. I want to see the ball hit the back of the net. Bolivia's given up 3 goals in their last 5 games, or 3 goals 3 times in their last 5 games. So I want to see him hit the back of the net. We need him to be confident in this tournament.
Facts. Well, we're going to take another break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, hey, it's the last block. We're going to give another happy birthday and ultimately our Copa America 2024 predictions. Welcome back to your average to good podcast, Call It What You Want. And this is our final segment, so we got to give a happy birthday, another special shout out to Brian McBrizzle, who featured on our latest Kicking It episode, which drops tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. There's a lot of things we talk about. his role with the U.S. men's national team, how, he produced year after year in the English Premier League with Fulham. A lot of countless incredible memories with the U.S. men's national team, including with Tony Meola in that 2002 World Cup where they went to the quarterfinals. But let's get to our Copa America predictions, Tony. So I'm going to ask you what you think all the way to your dark horse. So let's start with the winner. Who do you got winning the 2024?
Yeah,
Copa
let me
America?
run this down for you here. My winner, I got Argentina as the winner in this competition. I find it hard to see anyone else at the moment. This is an interesting one. My runner-up, I got Uruguay in this, but my Group C winner, I went with the U.S. I think the U.S. can pull off the group here, but I think Uruguay makes a deeper run in the competition. My top scorer, I went with Vinny Jr. I was up in the air with Messi and Vinny Jr., but I went with Messi as the player of the tournament, and Vinny Jr. is the guy who scores the most goals. Golden Glove, there were two guys in the competition for me, Alisson and Emi Martinez. I went with Emi Martinez. The U.S., where do they finish? I went quarterfinals. That would obviously either be Colombia or Brazil. I hope they get past one of those, but at the moment, I think I'd be crazy not to pick one of those other two teams. But I hope that that's the signature moment for the U.S. getting past that game. And my dark horse, and when I saw dark horse, I thought potentially to win it, I went Colombia based on what I saw, 10 days ago or so against the U.S.
I don't know if that counts as a dark horse, but I'll let it slide. I mean, it's Argentina and Brazil. Those are two favorites. I don't know if Colombia is necessarily a dark horse, but hey, we'll let it slide. I'm going to go winner Argentina, just like you. Easy way to the finals. They don't have to play Colombia, Uruguay, or Brazil until the final. So for me, Argentina are going to be the winners. I'm going to go Brazil are runners up. There's all this stuff going on with Ronaldinho, and you can't support Brazil. They're not getting it right. I think they come to life. This is Brazil, and the reason they do come to life is Vinny Jr., who's going to be my top scorer. Group C winners, like you, yeah, I think they can beat Uruguay, but Uruguay is Group C winners, and I think it's on goal differential, which is why I have them top in Group C. I think they're more ruthless, and they have a little bit more because of their high press. They'll score more goals. Golden Glove, Emi Martinez, player of the tournament. Yes, Leo Messi, which makes him want to stay, and he's going to play in the 2026 World Cup because he's not going out like that. He's not going to end it after winning again. Where does U.S. men's national team will finish? I think they finish in the quarterfinals. I think they also lose in the quarterfinals. Hopefully, maybe they take it to pens, and Matt Turner has another heroic penalty stop that allows them to move on. But who knows? And dark horse, I'm going with Uruguay. I think Uruguay could be the dark horse to win.
Wait. Colombia can't be the dark horse in third place in qualifying. Uruguay's in second place in qualifying. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Dark horse.
Exactly. Right. Well, the real dark horse should come from the opposite side. If Argentina don't get to the final on that side and they win. So we'll leave it at that. All right. I didn't even get to Jimmy and Brian's predictions. Brian's is wild. He has runner-up USA. So we'll leave it at that. Well, that's it for this episode of Call It What You Want. It was just me and Tony. We held it down. Thank you for joining, and catch us on the next on the flip side for the next show. But make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast. Call It What You Want, and take a few seconds to leave a rating. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, a review. Catch us on the CBS Sports Golazo Network. We're out.